Good afternoon. Welcome to our Tocqueville Talks. And to our friends at home, I hope you have lunch as well. This is the third in a series of presentations about the signature programs at United Way. And this is really the one that knocked me out. Tour occurred back in 2019. We had, it was so emotionally moving that I still think about it. And hopeful that the emotion carries on in some other hearts and minds as well, because we're still looking for around support from our dear friend, Peter Waddell. And I'm going to use his name, because we still haven't heard from him. He came with us, and like me, he saw it as well. But welcome, everybody. Today's subject will be Resilient Richland, and it's one that I wish we were able to climb onto the city bus and go to one of the sites, just as we did back in October of 19. But because this program occurs in schools, we can't do that. And we'll sort of elbow our way into it. But anyway, I think you're going to enjoy it with a very short video followed by a super presentation. We'll hit it from there. Like last time, I think we'll take about 40 minutes, including the Q&A, so everybody can take care of whatever business they have to in the last 20 minutes of their lunch hour. This time I want to introduce my longtime friend, Phil Waddell, who is the chairman of Always United. Phil and I go back to when I started with United Way as a volunteer in 2006. So we kind of know each other and bump against each other and do things together and so forth. And if there's anybody out there in the ether who doesn't know me, I'm Jerry Davis, and I'm the chairman of the Tocqueville Society. So Phil and I are going to pass off introductions and so forth today. But Resilient Richland is a terrific program. It has an incredible response rate among the participants. And it's one that I find to be very moving. We're going to hear about, and you're welcome to ask questions about when the presentation is finished, how the program works in two different schools in Richland and Lexington County. And Jody Wallace is our guide through all this. Thank you for bringing those out there here and for getting us to them. But Phil, if you want to make some introductions as soon as this video is over, we'll take it from there. Okay.
I think we'll do Phil introductions first.
You're gonna do Phil first? Yeah. Okay, Phil.
You'll need to do the introduction first, Joyce. Thank you, Jerry. I wouldn't want to impinge Jerry's honesty, but I would be the first to tell you, I think he exaggerated his introduction of me. I've known Jerry for a long time, but I don't know that I'm the better half of that partnership the way he made it out to be. But we do go back a long way to United Way, and it's been a pleasure to work with Jerry over the years, and I look forward to many more years with it. I'm going to introduce the three speakers that we're going to hear today. The first is another person that I've had the pleasure to serve with. I know when my phone rings and I look at my cell phone and it says Jennifer Moore, there's two things. Number one, my workload's fixing to increase, and number two, there's no point in saying that. So it's just a foregone conclusion. But Jennifer is the Vice President for Community Impact at United Way, the Midlands, and has been at United Way for 15 years. You must have got there just before I was city home executive. She has worked with Health and Human Services programs in the Midlands for the past 20 years. She directs programs, initiatives, and positive work in United Way of the Midlands' key focus areas of health, education, and economic mobility, and building resiliency. She is a content expert in housing and homeless issues. She coordinated the Midlands 2015 flood recovery work that helped rebuild nearly 300 homes and began the Midlands Housing Trust Fund, a nonprofit incubated by United Way to create and preserve affordable housing. She's a graduate of the University of South Carolina, nonprofit leadership program at Duke University, and leadership Lexington County. She resides in Lexington with her husband, Oliver, daughters Riley and Sydney, and slowest but most loved retired Greyhound, racing Greyhound on the East Coast, Biscuit. I like that name. Our second speaker is Robert Womanette. Robert is originally from Greenville, South Carolina. After graduating from the University of the South in Swanee, Tennessee, he attended Northeastern University School of Law. He then worked in Washington, D.C. and also obtained a master's in advocacy from Georgetown Law Center. In 2000, he moved to Columbia to specialize in death penalty cases. After almost 15 years of practicing law, Robert became a teacher at Greer High School. At the same time, he co-founded Achieve Columbia, a nonprofit group that builds long-lasting and deep relationships with middle school and high school students and their families through a unique combination of group and individualized mentoring and tutoring, resource coordination, and counseling to ensure that each has the opportunity to succeed. After the 2016-17 year, he decided to take on responsibilities of Achieve Columbia full-time as its executive director. In 2018, Robert agreed to become executive director of Richland County Public Education Partners and brought the Achieve Columbia model with him. RCPEP has partnered with the United Way of the Midlands to oversee Resiliency Teams at Jackson Creek Elementary School. Robert also advocates for public education at the state and local levels. I left the bio for my third speaker. Thank you, Joey. I had two printouts. I left one with, one without. Sabina Mazzo Taylor. Since January 2017, Sabina has been the principal at Jackson Creek Elementary and Richland School District 2. Sabina is an experienced principal with a demonstrated history of working in the education management industry, skilled in K-12 education, NPCT, EC generalist, classroom management, lesson planning, differentiated instruction, culturally relevant teaching, and curriculum development. Strong educational professional with a doctor of philosophy, focused in early childhood education, early literacy from the University of South Carolina here in Columbia. Those will be our three speakers for the day.
All right, afternoon. So I get the honor of kicking you off today with an overview of why we started Resilient Midlands. And then we're going to watch a short video, and then you're going to hear from the real superstars of this program that we're going to talk about, which is Robert and Sabina. So again, Jennifer Moore, I oversee our community work here at United Way and have the absolute pleasure of working with this program as well. So we have had a focus in homelessness for many years. And so that's working with families experiencing homelessness, veterans, and people living on the streets. And a few years back, about 10 years ago, we started seeing an emerging trend in our community, and that was young people, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds that were on the streets, and those numbers were rising. And so we developed a special initiative to create housing, and so we created about 80 units of housing in about 2 years for this population. And we thought, wow, we have done amazing work, which is really good work. But the kids that we were putting in the housing were really, really struggling. And they really needed intense supports to stay in that housing, more than what we anticipated. 19-year-olds that had accumulated an entire lifetime at 19 years old of trauma that they needed constant wraparound services. So we thought we were going upstream looking at youth homelessness, and we realized we weren't. We had to go further upstream. And that's when we created Resilient Richland at the time. So we started looking at research that's about 25 years old now on adverse childhood experiences called ACEs. So ACEs are traumatic events that are very common that happen to many of us, experiences from birth until 18 years, things like divorce in the family, financial hardship, kids not having enough to eat and things like that, to along the spectrum of more intense experiences. So verbal abuse, physical abuse, a parent that's experiencing incarceration, and sexual abuse. So the research behind ACEs and further research after that developed what's called an ACEs score. So there's 10 primary types of experiences that can happen to young people that can contribute to what's called this ACEs score. So it goes from 0 to 10. So each type of experience, you get 1 point. What you find in the research is 4 is about your tipping point. So a young person, by the time they get to 18, if they get to about 4 of these experiences in their lifetime, that's the tipping point that can create long-term adversity for them. So adults who've had 4 or more ACEs have a higher prevalence of heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and suicide. So we knew we had to create interventions to go even further upstream and care for our children. You can go to our website, and I know Maria will also send you a link where you can find the ACEs score and do your own score or share that with others on the website. There's also what's called a Resiliency Quiz. And the Resiliency Quiz will also talk about supports that you've had as a young person that helped you bounce back, to mitigate and to overcome those traumatic experiences. And so building resiliency is why we created Resilient Richland. Initially, it was focused on Richland County only. And right now we are raising resources to expand it to Resilient Midlands to cover all of our 6 counties. We have 3 primary strategies. The first one is we do trainings for providers and the general public about ACEs and complex trauma. We also have interventions for parents. So we use an evidence-based model called Triple P, Positive Parenting Program, to help with practical real-life approaches to empower parents in their family situations. So if you've ever been in the grocery store like I have, and either seen a parent or like me been that parent, where you have a child who's absolutely having a meltdown. We've all experienced this, right? And as a parent, you want to crawl into the floor of the actual grocery store, right? Triple P, what it does is it works with parents in a very practical, down-to-earth approach to kind of say, teach classes on positive bedtime routines, positive shopping experiences, and things like that. So again, you're teaching parents how that you can embrace these parenting skills. The third way is what we're going to hear about today, and that's our resiliency teams. So the resiliency teams, and we're going to show you a very, very short video and then have Robert and Sabina talk about it more. It is a social worker and behavioral interventionist placed in the early education grades of elementary school, so kindergarten through 2nd grade. The social worker helps navigate resources for parents so that parents can develop that trusting, supportive relationship to feel like they can ask for help when they need things like rent or utilities or other supports that they need. And then you have a interventionist that does direct interventions in the classrooms to support not only a child if they might be having an emotional outburst, but also supports to that teacher in the classroom as well. So we're very excited. We're going to show, Joe's going to show you a very, very quick video, and then you can hear from Robert and Sabina. Thank you so much.
So United Way has a couple of different initiatives helping kids overcome challenges and adversity. We bring attention to what childhood trauma is, destigmatize it so that educators as well as youth service professionals understand the ongoing support that's needed for kids experiencing childhood trauma. We also have a couple of resiliency teams, one based at Jackson's Creek. Each have a staff member that is on site support for the kids, and then we also have social workers that help parents.
What Resilient Richland did was provide the structure so that teachers can focus on the academics. And then we had the social worker and the behavior interventionist who could really target the social and emotional aspect of learning.
I'm doing a lot of meeting the basic needs of parents this year because of the pandemic. More recently, a family was forced out of their home for reasons out of their control, and we were able to help get them back on their feet, and now the kids are loving their new place, and so that was really cool to see them kind of at one of their low points, and now to do a home visit and see them just like thriving and doing really well.
As a behavioral interventionist, it's been really important. First graders see me as a positive and not a negative. They work towards behavior goals and they might get a reward as far as, okay, well now you have this special time to come see me.
It's our goal to have every kid throughout the Midlands have the equal opportunity to reach their full potential and excel. And I think in order to do that, we must be a part of something that addresses services and resources that are available to them in their community.
I'm going to stand behind the podium. This is my security blanket. My name is Robert, and I've written down 5
Good
words.
morning. My name is Melissa Dunn. I am the Director of Education at United Way of the Midlands. And we would like to welcome Yvette Davis.
I'm always happy to hear Melissa's voice. So I wrote down 5 words today. I'm going to keep it to my 10 minutes, but relationships, pandemic, dinners, motel, and breathing. And I'm going to go through these really quickly. Jennifer mentioned relationships. We're working with families who have been living in poverty for generations often. And there were times when I was doing this work years ago in middle school, and a principal said, you know, you've been working with this student for 3 months and we're not seeing a lot of change. And I said, he's been alive for 15 years and nobody has ever provided him support. His mom has been alive for 35 years and nobody's ever provided her support. So it's going to take time, and we're going to have to learn to be patient. And we're going to have to learn to develop relationships. And relationships are hard to measure. And I'm often in the education world, hear data driven all the time, and we should collect data. But we also don't need to exclude things that are sometimes hard to measure. And someone asked me at one point, what's the criteria for a family becoming a part of your resiliency team's caseload? And I said, there is none except a family reaching out or a teacher reaching out and saying that they're struggling with a student or a family. Because we don't know until we've got time to get to know that family. And often the biggest obstacles are the things that families hold closest. And they are not going to tell you that the first time you give them an intake form or the first time you meet with them. And they may not tell you that 6 months later. They do not owe us their trust. We have got to earn it. And that takes time. And that's what our social worker and our behavior interventions do all the time. Those relationships, as it turns out, are very important. We were lucky enough to start before the pandemic and work with families in normal circumstances, long enough that our social worker behavior interventionists developed really good relationships with them before the school closed down. That turned out to be huge for us. Because while schools across the state lost track of 16,000 students for months at a time and had to call DSS to then go out and try to investigate and figure out what was happening to these students, we did not lose track of a single family. And in fact, that was not something that was hard for us. The families were reaching out to our social worker, and our social worker was reaching back out to them every single day to make sure we maintained contact. That was really important getting through the pandemic. We're obviously not through it yet, getting through the school closures for these families. But one of the things we're trying to also do is build a community among families and at the school. And when these families started at Jackson Creek, they didn't have a community yet because they were starting as kindergartners. They didn't know the school. But we realized really quickly they also didn't have a family or a community amongst each other. And they felt isolated from one another. And we talked to some families, and none of them knew a single other family in kindergarten. And I thought about my own children's kindergarten. I knew half of the families. And I took that for granted, that I could call up and say, hey, my kid's struggling with this teacher. Is your kid having the same problem? Quite often the answer was no. And I realized it's just my kid. But it helped to be able to figure that out, right? Or it helped to be able to go to the park with a Starbucks coffee and see another parent and have some informal discussion. I look back now and I realized that provided me a chance to troubleshoot child rearing. And so we started having parent dinners at Jackson Creek. And we would provide childcare and food, and then one topic each night to discuss. And it was a true discussion, and parents were offering advice, parents were receiving advice. And as much as anything, a parent would say they felt good hearing that someone else was struggling with the same issue. It wasn't them messing it up. And that's important, because sometimes child rearing is just messy, and you need to know that you're not the one that's messing things up. I was talking to a parent after schools closed, and she said the parent dinners were the things she missed most. Absolutely. It was not even a close call when I asked her that question. And she said she'd been to other parent dinner nights at other schools, but these were different because they felt like family. And every time I say that, I almost cry, because I realize how easy my life has been and how I've always had a family in my community, in my family, in my neighborhood, and at my schools. And these folks needed that just as much as we all do, and we help to provide that. Two more quick stories about what our team does outside of school and inside the school. Our social worker, Caitlin, whom you saw in the video, was working with a kindergarten student. She was 5 years old, and she had a 4-year-old sibling. The two daughters were living with their mom in a motel. This is not sustainable. They're days away for homelessness. Anytime you've got a family living in a motel, you have to be worried, because living in that sort of poverty is very expensive. That mom was paying a premium every single day to get by. But this mom loved these kids as much as any parent can ever love kids. And I knew it because one day I was in the cafeteria and I looked at one of their lunches, and it wasn't fancy, it wasn't extravagant, but this mom sent a lunch with them every day, and she cut the sandwiches so perfectly. I mean, I can't imagine having done that. I mean, it was just the way she placed it in the lunchbox so perfect. And I actually commented to Caitlin, like, wow, that is awesome. And she said, oh my God, this mom will do anything for these kids. So Caitlin had developed a relationship with her so that she could really talk through things with her. And she said, listen, you don't have childcare, but your 4-year-old could be in pre-K. And the mom said, okay, well, let's do it, but I don't know where to start. Well, we need a birth certificate. All right, well, we got to go to vital records. And if Caitlin had left it at that, the mom might have struggled to navigate the bureaucracy that is vital records. Caitlin took her down, they got the birth certificate. Caitlin then went to the school administration and enrolled her. And when they were walking out, the mom hugged Caitlin. 2 days later, the mom had a job, and 1 week later, she was in an apartment. And thankfully, the job she had was at a store that stayed open during the pandemic. Now, that does not mean that family struggles are over by any stretch of the imagination, but we avoided homelessness, and we put them at least in a slightly more stable position than they were the week before. Lastly, our brilliant behavior interventionist, Tanisha, provides support for kids during the day. Many kids who live in poverty come to school with their brains going 1,000,000 miles an hour. Chronic stress is by itself traumatic. And so we've got to recognize that teachers can't just teach through it. We have to acknowledge and deal with it, and then teach after we've dealt with some of the underlying issues. And so she helps the students learn to identify and regulate their emotions. That's a huge resiliency factor so that they can cope with stresses as they happen. We really take note of when a particular kid is struggling. We were talking about a kid recently who struggles in the first 30 minutes and the last 30 minutes. Struggles in the first 30 minutes because of the chaos he's coming from. He struggles in the last 30 minutes because his body knows he's about to leave the safest part of his day. But I will tell you that when you see first graders walking down a hall and recognize that they're about to lose control and starting to do in a very exaggerated first grade version of the breathing exercises that they've learned in their small group mindfulness classes, you know that you are on the right track. So I'm really proud of our team at Jackson Creek and the team at Watkins Nance about the trajectory that we're trying to set for these families and their students and the support we're providing to teachers. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak to you, and I'll obviously stick around.
Then we have Dr. Massa Taylor.
Hi, everyone. I don't know if you can see me or not. Am I there?
Yes, you can see and you look great.
Do you, okay, I can't see myself, so I don't know if you see me or not, but welcome and hello, everyone. I am Dr. Sabina Masso Taylor, the very, very proud principal of Jackson Creek Elementary School. And I cannot say enough wonderful things about Resilient Midlands. I tell you what Jennifer and Robert said, I'm here to punctuate everything that they articulated. First want to say Jennifer introduced us as superstars, and I want to go back and say Robert, Jennifer, and Resilient Team, they are the superstars. They are allowing us to be the very best we can be here at Jackson Creek. We have gone from 535 students upwards to 720 students a school year. That's a lot of students to meet their needs. We have an 87% poverty rate. I first and foremost want to say that I don't care what the poverty rate, I've never seen a parent that doesn't send their very, very best. I know our parents love our children. They may not have all the skills necessary to give them everything that they need or want them to have. So while we have some resources here at Jackson Creek, it is so challenging to try to spread those resources out to maximize those resources. To have Caitlin here, Caitlin Matthews and Tanisha Bryant here working with our students is nothing short of amazing. As you heard, I am an early childhood person. That is my area. I believe passionately that good early childhood education is good education, period. And the ability to meet their needs early on really does help later on. And that research is very clear in that. With Resilient Midlands, formerly Resilient Richland, having them work so specifically with that grade level has allowed the teachers to maximize their teaching instruction, because Ms. Matthews and Ms. Bryant are able to come in and offer that support in the social and emotional area that our students need, as well as the academic area. And when we're looking at the young child, or any child for that, we want to work with that whole child. It is just more challenging with the younger children because, as Robert articulated, students are coming in with all this kind of stuff and they don't know how to navigate through that. Tanisha working with the students and Caitlin working with the families, coupled with the teachers focusing on the academics, has created an environment here that has been nothing short of just amazing. Robert is so right. The parents love those parent nights. We offer those parent nights, but these were more intimate. They were more specific. And providing that to our families early gives them that foundation necessary for the future, so they don't feel like they're floundering. They have that. I have seen Miss Matthews, I'll go back and forth and call her Caitlin Miss Matthews. They're our people. So she has gotten in the car, delivered hot spots. Miss Bryant is in the classrooms. I was in there doing an observation just yesterday, as a matter of fact. And one of the students was having a little challenge, and the teacher leaned in and said, "Do you need to go visit Miss Bryant?" And the child got up and went out. I mean, without this, the child may have exacerbated the behavior. The teacher would have had to refocus her instruction, addressing the behavior, and the lesson went on. The child is supported. And I think it's just the best of everything that we can offer. Our school does have a behavior interventionist, but she serves every other grade level. So having them to provide this specific, intensive, one-on-one with the students and the parents and the teachers has made a difference. I will tell you, part of building a culture in a community is all about trust. And because we have a transient population, because our students are in and out, it is hard to build that trust. And having the consistency with Resilient Midlands, having them for the past 3 years has developed that consistency and developed that culture, so that when students come in, now they're coming into a culture. They're not changing the culture. And so what they're able to offer is some consistency and just support. And I honestly cannot say enough good things. I can't imagine where we would have been without them. And Robert, oh my gosh, so amazing, has supported us and really fought to keep them here. And it's just meant so much to the students that we serve. There's 100 students in that grade level, and they have matriculated, from kindergarten all the way to second now. And I can see such a difference. And I feel very confident that this will be a game changer for them as they go on into 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I can go on and on. and I often do. So I'm going to stop while I'm ahead. If you all have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Folks at home, if you want to put a question in the chat, or you can pop on and just ask out loud. But
That would be great. Yeah. I'm trying to navigate my little screen here.
This is Liz. I was wondering, you going to keep the same 2 people with the same kids all the way through the 6th grades or whatever at your school? Or are you going to be able to offer the program to other kids in other grades?
So that may be a Robert question, but yes, they have been here for 3 years. I think the plan was for 3 years. I don't know the plan past this year, and I think it's a year-to-year thing, but I would love to be able to continue this. And even if it's not taking them through 5th grade, coming back to kindergarten and starting a new one with the kindergarten students again, because I think providing foundationally the support really does help to support the families in the future.
And to follow up on what Dr. Masso Taylor was saying, the original plan was to start in kindergarten and go through the end of 3rd grade, recognizing the importance of the 3rd grade reading especially, and then having 2 years to kind of monitor the families and students in the kind of safe confines of elementary school to see how they were doing.
any other questions?
It's
I've got one question. Can I ask a question for you?
yes.
So I'm real interested in the parent relationship. The kids come to school, you got a touch point there, you're able to see them, kind of keep track of them. But what about the continuity relevant to the parents, the families? How do you manage that continuity to ensure that you're also making progress in that area? Because they're kind of on the front lines of the challenges.
Right.
They create a lot of the challenges in some cases. So how do you manage that part?
Well, so Caitlin, at the beginning of kindergarten, she called every single family within the first week of school starting to introduce herself and make sure they knew she was there as a resource. And then Caitlin would begin to notice maybe some indications that some families needed some support. So if they hadn't reached out to her, she would begin reaching out to them. And it takes time, but over time she's built this relationship so that she's not now having to reach out to a parent saying, what do you need? Those parents are actually reaching out to her because they trust her so much. Now we're getting new students this year. Right. We've met before, obviously. And so she has started that process with them. And it's just, constant efforts. And there are some times when she gets some pushback because some families have had negative experiences with social worker, for example, from DSS. And so Caitlin's very good at not being pushy, recognizing that dynamic, but being consistent and checking back in. And over time, parents realize that she really is there to help. And so, she's got on any given month, about 25 to 30 families she's working with really intensively. Now those rotate, not every family is on that list every month, but over time, she's working very closely with probably 60 families, 50 to 60 of the 80 families in that grade.
How often do you do the parent dinners?
So pre-pandemic, we were doing them once a month. We haven't done them since school shut down and we haven't really felt comfortable doing in-person things. We are hoping, I've talked to Dr. Masso Taylor about this, we're hoping to once things settle down, hopefully after January, to do those dinners, but also then do some reading specific dinners to help the parents get engaged with their children's reading and learn how they can best help them at home. And so we would end up, with like 2 a month, one kind of general, one reading focus.
And lastly, have you been able to recruit and sustain great parents that now are giving back to other parents based on their experience? And is that helping to kind of grow the program?
That is such an awesome question. So what we began to see during the parent dinners is that, families are at different places at different times. And some families would kind of step up and be a leader of the discussion and provide a lot of advice. One of the things we considered doing, but the pandemic made this just too hard at the time, was trying to pair up some parents with kindergarten parents as mentors as they enter kindergarten. It provides parents a huge confidence boost to give them the opportunity to be that mentor for somebody. And I think also it exponentially increases how many people we can touch. But the schools were shut down, so we haven't even got past that brainstorming phase. But we would like to see, we would like to create an opportunity for parents to interact like that and kind of lead.
Yeah, I think that would be very important if you can continue to work down that.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
thank you.
I agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions?
Hey, this is Paul Fant. Can you, I can't see I see myself, but nobody else. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I just wondered, I think that was Jeff Archie talking. I just recognize that voice, if I'm not mistaken. But my question is, what is your greatest need right now? I know you're meeting a lot of needs. There's got to be something out there that that you're not doing because for lack of funds or whatever. What would you identify as being your greatest desire to address that we could help with?
Can I take that one?
Sure.
Funding.
Funding.
So we're in our third year of our resiliency teams. The first 2 years, those were fully funded by Richland County. During their budget process, they felt like this past spring, they felt like they did not have the resources, so they did not renew the funding for the teams. So we worked with Robert and Nord Family Foundation, the Sisters of Charity, to continue the Jackson Creek team, but we are looking for resources to continue the teams later on.
And if I could add a tiny bit to that,
Yes.
I spoke to a wonderful guy up in Boston who's running a charter school, and I was connected to him through someone down here, and he's got 350 students, a full-time social worker, a full-time social emotional therapist, 5 interns, and the school building is connected to a behavioral health center for 350 students. And he said what they're doing is amazing. And so one of the things I keep saying is that, when we take a regular school social worker, for example, some of them have 2,000 families that they're trying to keep track of, which is absolutely impossible. And so, even if you say, okay, we're going to cut that half to 1,000, that's still, at some point, it's still impossible. I really would love to see the ability to saturate a school with the supports they need, because then you see an entire change across the school. And lastly, I will say one of the biggest gaps, and we've talked with Jennifer about this, is mental health, access to mental health care. That is something that we're consistently confronted with and having to try to coordinate on a case-by-case basis. But it's just, there's not just one place we can call and make it happen. So that's been really hard.
I want to just add to that, it's human resources. I mean, on my budgets, anything I have, I put in human resources. I mean, we need people over things. And for the number of children that we have, people. And that's why Resilient Midlands has been so powerful. It's offered the people that we need. So, people.
This is, I know you all can't see it, Sarah Fawcett, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. First of all, thank you everybody for being here. I would say to funding and advocacy, if you are talking to people on Richland County Council, you're talking to Richland 1 and Richland 2 school board members, tell them what you learned today, because the transformational possibilities of this work it's a win for everybody. It's a win for everybody. It's a win for the schools. It's a win for the students. It's a win for the families. It's a win for the district if we can grow the program. So funding and advocacy, they go hand in hand, because this is a public-private partnership, or has been up to this point. And for sustainability needs to continue to be a public-private partnership. So, anytime you've got a chance to let people know, hey, I heard this great presentation about resiliency that's going on, use those opportunities to help advocate for this.
Terrific lunch and learn opportunity for all of us. And Jeff, your question about the parent engagement sent me all the way back in Maya to a summer where I taught children learning disabilities, and our biggest challenge was the parents. we had a game plan, but parents didn't, couldn't figure into it well enough. Yeah. Anyway, thank you all for coming to this lunch and learn today. This is our third, and we have another one coming up on November 2nd at noon. This is the Tocqueville Talks, where we're going to hear from Sarah all about the United Way State of the Union. By the time we get to November 2nd, the United Way will have finished the community assessment, and she will clue us in on the 3-year plan that the board will have approved.
I think they'll approve in December.
Okay.
So
So that means we get to be the muscle that pushes us across the line, so to speak. And then on October 7th, for my associates at Tocqueville, we're going to have a social reception. It'll be in the Blue Marlin Vista Room. And it's something we haven't done as a group for a long time. We hope that all the members of Tocqueville can come and enjoy just a social hour, 2 hours together, cocktails, heavy hors d'oeuvres, and an opportunity to catch up with each other. We'll have very little presentation, but enough so that we define why we are there and why we support the United Way in such an incredible way that the Tocqueville membership does that. So with that, I guess we're a little over 40 minutes, but Bill, if you want to close us out.
Thank you, Jerry. I'll just stand up here instead of a little bit there. Appreciate the speakers today. It's been extremely informative. I think it's, as Sarah said, it goes to the core of what we do here at United Way of the Midlands. And Always United, who I represent, we partner with United Way of the Midlands. We're an affinity group there. And we're focused primarily on those same 3 areas that United Way of the Midlands does, to do whatever we can to help with those. And on the 29th of September, we're going to have host an Impact Midlands. And this event series is going to provide speakers and resources that focus on the issues surrounding financial stability, health, and education as it pertains to our community. And this first event will focus on affordable housing in the Midlands. Leela Anna Sauls, President and CEO of Homeless No More, and Andy Pope, the Homeless Coalition Director for United Way of the Midlands, are going to be our speakers that day. So I would encourage you, if you want to know more about where we're doing with the homeless and what's going on with that population in the Midlands particularly, but also some statewide, this would be an ideal opportunity. You can go to ua.org and go to the Always United thing and click and sign up. And we would love to have you. I think these talks, we have discovered one thing with the pandemic is that these talks and the things that we put together, I have seen more information disseminated to a broader group of people than I think I've ever seen in my years here at United Way. And it just continues to kind of build on itself. We're getting more and more interest, and that's good. So I encourage you to continue, come to the Always United ones, and as well as the Tocqueville Talks. And with that, again, thanks to our speakers and everybody for taking time out of your day. And Sarah, if you don't have anything else, I will adjourn the group.
Adjourn the group, please.
And we stand adjourned.